Sometimes, the scariest stories start in the most peaceful places. I never thought I would be haunted by something in the countryside, especially not by kindness. Yet, here I am, telling you a story that still makes my skin crawl, even years later. Even when I try to laugh it off for the camera. If you're watching Mr.QV Horror tonight, know this. Everything I'm about to tell you happened to me, not in some nightmare, but in the sticky, sunlit, and shadowy heart of rural Vietnam. It was the summer I turned 30, a time when I felt lost in my own life. Heartbreak, burnout, and a restlessness I couldn't shake chased me out of Hanoi. My friend Phuc, the kind of guy who always knows when you need an escape, invited me to stay at his childhood home in a village so small it didn't show up on Google Maps. Come for a week, he said. No noise, no deadlines, just real life. I thought I needed quiet. I didn't know I was about to find something that would make the city feel safe by comparison. The road to Phuc's village wound through green rice paddies and bamboo forests, sunlight slanting through the leaves like golden rain. Every few kilometers, we'd pass shrines at the roadside, little houses for the wandering spirits, bright with faded paper, incense sticks bristling in ceramic cups. Phuc's family house sat at the end of a long, dusty lane, with chickens scratching the dirt, banana trees leaning over the walls, and the scent of lemongrass and wood smoke in the air. I felt lighter the moment I stepped off the bus. The city's heaviness just fell away. The days there were simple, waking up to roosters and children laughing, helping his grandmother weed the garden, fishing in a muddy stream that twisted behind the houses. Evenings were my favorite. After dinner, everyone gathered in the courtyard. Lanterns swung from the eaves. The adults drank rice wine and traded stories. The kids played hide and seek around the well, their shadows flickering in the lantern light. For the first time in months, I started to believe I could breathe again. But in every place, no matter how gentle, there are secrets. And in every family, there's always one story they whisper instead of shout. It was on the third night that I first heard the name Ong Quang. That evening, the air was thick with the promise of rain. Lightning flashed far off in the hills, but in the courtyard, we sat and talked, as if nothing could touch us. One of the uncles, his voice low, eyes fixed on the bottom of his cup, started talking about the old days, the bad floods, the years when water swallowed the village overnight. We lost so much, he said. Homes, buffalo, people, but we always had Quang. At first, I thought he meant some sort of hero, a war survivor. But the more they spoke, the clearer the picture became. Ong Quang was the village night watchman, the man who kept his rounds when everyone else was asleep. Lantern in hand, Kang tapping the ground. He had no family of his own, but everyone remembered him a gentle giant, always first to help, never scared of the dark. 20 years ago, Phuc's aunt said, voice trembling. There was a big storm. The river broke its banks. A child, my cousin's son, fell in. Quang jumped in after him. She paused, and I saw the weight of the memory drag at her face. He saved the boy, but the current took him. We never found his body. Some nights, when the moon is right, you can still see his lantern near the bridge. The adults grew quiet, looking at the ground, as if afraid to meet each other's eyes. I remember how Fook laughed, trying to break the spell. Maybe he's still on patrol. Maybe the village owes him too much to let him rest. But his grandmother, old and nearly blind, reached out and gripped my wrist so tightly it hurt. She leaned in, her breath warm with betel and herbs. If you ever see a lantern at the river, you turn away. Don't cross. Don't answer if someone calls your name at night. I thought it was just a story to scare the kids. I thought a lot of things back then. That night, after the courtyard emptied and the lanterns were snuffed, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to the distant thunder, the frogs singing in the ditches. The rain started slow, then pounded the tin roof in waves. I tried to sleep, but the darkness in that house was deep, old, as if something lived in the corners. Every so often, I thought I heard footsteps on the stone path outside, slow, steady. The sound of a cane tapping in the wet. Sometime after midnight, the rain stopped. The world went silent, except for the drip of water from the banana leaves. I drifted into a half-dream, images of the flooded river, the lantern swinging in the fog, a man's voice calling, not angry, not pleading, just there, as if waiting for an answer. When I woke, it was morning. The house was full of sunlight and laughter again. The memory faded, almost enough for me to forget, but that peace wouldn't last. Not in a place where the dead don't always stay gone. The next day, everything seemed perfectly normal. That's how these stories always go, isn't it? The sun came out strong and hot, burning away the last shreds of fog. The uncles were already out by the fields, their hats bobbing above the rice, and Fook's grandmother scolded the chickens as if nothing could touch her little world. I almost believed that nothing had happened at all, that maybe the strange tension from the night before was only in my head. But when I stepped outside, I noticed a row of fresh incense sticks stuck into the mud at the gate, burned down to black, leaving behind only curls of smoke and a smell that didn't quite belong to daytime. As I walked around the yard, I caught glimpses of other small offerings. A bowl of salt at the threshold, a cluster of marigolds left under the window, old coins pressed into the cracks of the brick wall. These things didn't feel like decoration. They felt like warnings, or maybe bargains. Breakfast was a quiet affair. The elders talked in low voices, eyes flickering to the windows whenever the wind picked up. Only the kids seemed untouched, running in and out of the house, chasing each other with grasshoppers and scraps of a colored paper. I found myself glancing more often toward the back of the property, where the path led down to the stream. From the kitchen, I could just see the old wooden bridge, gray and bowed, railings missing in places, half swallowed by tall reeds. In the morning sun, it looked innocent enough, but I couldn't shake the memory of last night's voice, of the cane tapping in the dark. Fook caught me staring and grinned, still thinking about Kwong. I shrugged, pretending I wasn't rattled. Your family really believes all that? Huh. He smiled, but his eyes didn't quite match his mouth. Out here, you have to believe something. The river takes what it wants. The day passed in a blur of small chores. I helped patch a hole in the chicken coop, sorted dried chilies in the shade, learned how to make rice cakes with sticky fingers. I tried to lose myself in the routines, but every hour or so, I would feel a chill drift through the hot air like someone had opened a door to another season. Just for a second. That afternoon, a heavy stillness settled on the village. It was the kind of heat that presses down on you until even the birds go quiet. A few neighbors stopped by, leaving little gifts. A cluster of bananas, a woven fan, a tiny bottle of home-brewed wine. Every visitor left quickly, eyes never lingering long near the stream or the bridge. When I mentioned going for a walk down to the water, Fook's grandmother snapped at me, sharp as a whip. Not today. Let the river rest. I didn't argue. Something in her voice made it impossible. As dusk settled, the sky bruised purple and gold, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Dinner was early and quiet. The storm from the night before had left the air damp and heavy. When the sun dropped below the treetops, the old men gathered again for tea and cigarettes. This time, their stories were shorter, told in whispers. Nobody mentioned Ong Kwang, but once or twice, someone looked down the lane toward the bridge and shivered. When the last cup was empty and the lamps turned low, I headed to bed with a strange heaviness in my chest, a feeling that something was coming, even if I couldn't name it. As I lay on the bamboo mat, the sounds of the village faded. A dog barking, crickets, the faint clink of someone washing bowls. The house settled into silence. I tried to read by flashlight, but the letters blurred and my eyes grew heavy. I must have drifted into a shallow, uneasy sleep. It was the river that woke me, or maybe the memory of the river. In my dream, I was standing on the bridge, moonlight turning the water to silver. I heard someone calling a child's voice, thin and frightened. "Help me!" Then another voice, older, deeper, echoing through the mist. "Stay back. Don't come any closer." I woke with a start, heart pounding. The room was dark. Shadows pressed against the walls. My mouth was dry. I sat up, listening, but all I could hear was the slow drip of water from the eaves. A breeze moved through the house, carrying the faint smell of incense and wet earth. And then, somewhere outside, I heard footsteps. Slow, steady, the unmistakable tap of a cane. I told myself it was a neighbor, a wandering animal, anything but what the stories whispered. But the sound grew louder, closer, until I was certain it was coming up the lane toward our house. It stopped at the gate. Silence. Then, as if someone stood just beyond the threshold, a voice low and gentle, but impossibly clear, spoke my name. Ku. I froze. No one in the village called me by that name. Only Fook's family. Only those who really knew me. The voice was calm, almost fatherly. QV, it's not safe tonight. Don't go down to the water. Every muscle in my body wanted to answer, to get up, to peek out the window. But a cold memory rose up. The old woman's warning. If you ever see a lantern at the river, turn away. Don't answer if someone calls your name at night. I lay back down, squeezing my eyes shut. The sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The footsteps moved away, slow and measured, disappearing down the lane. I didn't sleep again until morning. By the time dawn crept across the rooftops, I almost convinced myself it was all a dream. The night was so quiet. The house full of ordinary noises, laughter, dishes, the squeal of a baby chasing chickens. I washed my face with cool water and tried to brush away the feeling that something was waiting for me in the sunlight, just out of sight. At breakfast, Fook seemed tense. His grandmother watched me closely, asking if I had slept well. I nodded, lying because the truth would sound crazy. As the others ate, I glanced at the doorway, at the patch of dirt where I'd heard the footsteps stop. There, just inside the threshold, was a line of muddy prints, large, bare, and perfectly clear. They led from the gate to the steps and vanished. Nobody else seemed to notice, or maybe nobody wanted to. Later that morning, as I sat peeling green mangoes with Fook, the village headman stopped by. He was an old man with a limp, his hair white, his eyes sharp and sad. He spoke quietly to Fook's grandmother, hands moving in slow circles. I watched as she pressed something into his palm, a piece of red string. Nodded 3 times, and he nodded gravely before leaving. Bad luck in the water. Fook explained in a whisper. Someone heard voices last night by the stream. People are scared. I wanted to ask more, but his grandmother shook her head, silencing me with a look. The day dragged on, full of chores and small talk. I felt invisible, drifting through other people's routines. By afternoon, clouds rolled in gray and heavy. The air changed again, thick with static. At dinner, the mood was tight, words clipped short. No one laughed. After dark, I stepped outside, needing air. The village was a shadow world, lanterns burning in every doorway. Somewhere in the fields, a cow mooed, restless. I felt watched, but not in a threatening way, more like someone waiting, holding their breath. I wandered a little, careful not to stray far from the lights. I found myself near the old bridge. The water moved silently, swallowing the moon's reflection in ripples. For a moment, I thought I saw something just beyond the far bank, a faint, golden glow, swaying in the mist. It was the lantern, just as the story said. My heart skipped. I took a step forward, then stopped, remembering every warning I'd ever heard. The glow drifted closer, then paused. I could just make out the shape of a man, tall, thin, hat low over his face. He raised a hand in greeting, the lantern swinging. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the longing for an answer, maybe the weight of every unsaid word in my life. I called out, softly, "Who are you?" The lantern flickered, and the man smiled a small, sad smile that seemed to know all my secrets. "I'm just here to keep you safe," he said. A cold wind swept across the bridge. The lantern's glow faded, swallowed by the mist. The river seemed to sigh, the reeds bending as if in mourning. I stood there for a long time, heart hammering, until the cold finally drove me back to the house. As I slipped inside, Fook's grandmother was waiting by the door, her eyes bright with something between fear and hope. "He watches us," she whispered. "Some debts are never paid. Be careful, child." That night, sleep came in fits and starts. Every dream filled with water, light, and the slow, steady tap of a cane